apartment, so this is my roof look.
Brother Faul, how are you doing?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you doing?
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, my barber's was open.
Sheikh Abbasi,
It's
how are
good to
you?
be self-sufficient in Corona at times.
I see, Brother Paul.
So how's everything there, brother?
Very good. We are still locked down here. Still
Still
the same in the
locked
UK. Yeah.
Oh.
University is still closed.
So everything is online.
Yes, everything online.
I see.
Brother Abbasi, how are you? Really itu unmute ya, Abbasi, Brother Abbasi.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum. How are you, Mohammed?
Assalamualaikum.
Hello, Sheikh Abbasi.
Adnan, Google. How are you guys?
Very good, very good.
Mr. Abbasi, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. I thought I'll pop in and see how everything goes. So how are you guys, and what's been going on over the past week or two?
So in about 1 or 2 minutes, we'll begin the event.
I hope we'll be speaking in English and not Bahasa.
In the introduction part, we'll have Bahasa Indonesia and English. Don't worry.
Okay.
Like it.
So, Bahasa Inggris baik, Bahasa saya okay. Is that okay?
Parlez-vous français, Monsieur Abbasi?
Oh, sprechen Sie Französisch?
I thought we were going to do it in French.
Sprechen Sie Französisch? It's a mixture of.
It's quite funny, actually. They used to think their language was the language of diplomacy, but it doesn't seem to be anymore. It's been a long time.
We got so many languages here. أنا أتكلم اللغة العربية مع الشباب.
نعم يمكنني أن أتكلم باللغة العربية. كيف حالك شيخ عدنان؟ كيف حالك؟
بخير.
أنا مكاين الحمد لله.
وتتكلم العربية والفصحى.
لا أنا أتكلم باللغة العربية الفصحى يعني لكن أنا في تونس الآن باللغة الدارجة ثم باللغة الفرنسا شوية يعني.
ما شاء الله يعني لغتين يعني وثلاث لغات.
نعم اللغة العربية فصيحة
وفرنسا أيضا.
نعم.
ما شاء الله. My wife is French, so I pick up some French.
ما شاء الله.
I can speak some Arabic as well. Alhamdulillah, mashallah.
Anna must have picked up some Arabic from staying. I think you said you traveled to the UAE as well.
He's speaking with.
Is it Anna or is it? I'll get your name right. Sorry.
Yeah, it's Anna. Yeah, it's Anna. Sorry, I'm using my AK Jardin, my initials. When I was a kid, they call me AK. I haven't been to UAE, but then I've been to Central Asia.
Okay.
That region, and a lot of beautiful Islamic art in there.
But now I've connected you to my friend from Qatar, Shahida. So I think
yeah. Sorry, I wasn't able to recognize you because in the group chat you don't have a picture. Thank you so much. But I'm gonna go back to that later. So wonderful artworks. And I haven't been to Qatar just yet for some art exposure. But then I've been traveling via Qatar every time I go to Europe. Yeah. So
sorry to interlude here. We shall begin right now.
Okay.
Miss Triska,
dimulai Triska.
You may begin.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Host Geldinis, merhaba. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. salam sejahtera, salam Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Gimana nih kabar teman-teman semuanya? Semoga baik-baik saja ya. Nah, di webinar internasional kedua kali ini, kami dari IDE Dunia membawakan tema menciptakan masyarakat yang bersemangat, berkelanjutan, dan inklusif, dan melibatkan bekerja dan merencanakan pengembangan lokal dan komunitas di Inggris dan ASEAN. Baiklah, selanjutnya. Susunan acara webinar internasional kita kali ini yaitu pertama pembukaan, yang kedua pemaparan materi, yang ketiga tanya jawab, dan keempat penutup. Baiklah, agenda pertama, marilah kita buka bersama-sama acara webinar internasional kita dengan lapang hati dan dengan kebaikan. Semoga apa yang disampaikan oleh pemateri menjadi amal ibadah bagi kita semuanya.
Okay. Willkommen. Greetings, Your Excellencies, Mr. and Miss Speakers, fellow friends and colleagues. Welcome to IDE Dunia's second international webinar, where the event will focus on the topic of creating a vibrant, sustainable, and inclusive society and communities. More specifically, on engaging, working, and planning for local and community development in the UK and ASEAN. We would like to thank you all for your time to willingly be part of this informative event today. My colleague, Ms. Triska Rahmatul Aini, and I, Mohammed Fermi Austrianto, will be your host for today's event. For our audiences who are still unfamiliar with what is IDE Dunia as an organization, IDE Dunia, or the Institute of Democracy and Education Dunia, when translated to English, means global, is an NGO, specifically a youth organization that focuses on the network platforms and connecting Indonesian youth globally with innovations for a better Indonesia. IDE Dunia connects leaders, influential speakers, and scholars worldwide with the use of the network platform in sharing ideas, knowledge, skills, and values for the sole purpose of bettering Indonesia. IDE Dunia also provides a platform for guests worldwide to join us and to share their perspectives on education and globalization. So, my friends and colleagues, if you want to know more information regarding IDE Dunia and further upcoming events of IDE Dunia, do not forget to like and follow our social media accounts on Instagram at IDE Dunia, Facebook, the Institute of Democracy and Education, and Twitter at IDE Dunia. And last but not least, do not forget to also subscribe and like our YouTube channel at IDE Dunia TV. And remember to also click that ring button for future videos. And with this, without further ado, let's begin this event. So first off, we'd like to present you the layout of today's event. Each keynote speaker will have the duration of 10 minutes to present their materials. After all the speakers are done presenting, we transition to the Q&A session with a duration time of around 25 minutes for the Q&A session, where the audiences are able to interact with the speakers. We proudly present you all three keynote speakers for today's event. And in the order of presenting is as follows. First, Mr. Paul Salahuddin Armstrong. Second, Ms. Karina Jardin. And third, Mr. Adnan Sohail. And Ms. Triska.
Okay.
And Ms. Triska. Hello? Hello?
Here?
Is Ms. Triska here? Triska? Oh, oke. Okay.
Untuk selanjutnya yaitu acara inti dari para pemateri. Pemateri yang pertama yaitu Pak Paul Salahuddin Armstrong. Kepadanya
So for our first speaker, let's all welcome Mr. Paul Salahuddin Armstrong. Mr. Armstrong is the Managing Director of the Association of British Muslims and Muslim Chaplain at the University of Birmingham. Mr. Armstrong, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Real honor and pleasure to be here today, and I'll just put it on gallery view, seeing all your wonderful people who've joined us today from around the world. It's really it's an honor and a pleasure. The key thing with building inclusive societies is to make sure that we ensure that everybody has a part to play in it, that, you know, we don't excluding anyone. I mean, we've had the problem in the past in the United Kingdom, obviously because we were once upon a time not such a diverse society as we are now. So there was the main English culture which used to dominate everything. I mean, even dominated the Welsh and the Scottish, you know, so wherever you went in England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, the English language was the only language that was once upon a time taught in schools. People who had English backgrounds used to have advantages. I mean, I'm going back a long way now, you know, but this used to be how things were. So it's important to keep that in mind, because it outlines where we are now. If any of you have visited the United Kingdom in recent years, then you will see that England today is a much more diverse society. Wherever you go in Britain, you will see, you know, even the London Mayor. London Mayor is Muslim from a British Pakistani background. If you go into any shopping centre, you will see businesses that are either owned or influenced by people from all around the world. You will see, you know, our society has become very diverse, but it wasn't always that way. And that's the reason I'm starting from that point. And it's not something which can't be overcome, but there has to be a willingness there. The thing is, there are all sorts of barriers that people from minorities will face, because if people are in minority communities, they're not going to have the same kind of establishment within the society. They're not going to have the same degree of property ownership initially. They're not going to have the same kind of like family infrastructure, like you have extended families in a place where people are established. You know, so these are factors which, aside from obvious considerations of ethnicity, and religious background, which can be barriers to them where people have prejudices against these. But I think in many cases, these economic factors and the fact that they haven't necessarily had the same educational opportunities, this initially impairs people who come from other backgrounds until those communities become established in a particular society. Obviously, over time, these things do start to change. But if they're not facilitated by some government and also third sector organizations and hopefully businesses as well, that to actually facilitate that and give people opportunities, then it can take a very long time before we arrive at a situation where different communities can be, you know, start to become one community and people can start to get the same kind of opportunities and get the same kind of lifestyle. So, I mean, these are considerations that always need to be taken into account in any society. I personally, aside from what I do now, I've been involved previously in local politics, and I've been involved in interfaith for a lot longer than what I've been doing at the moment. So, I mean, I embraced Islam 20 years ago. I think about 18 or 19 years I've been heavily involved in interfaith. So, you know, an interfaith is an interesting one, because interfaith, people often just think of religion, but it doesn't always mean that we're just talking about religion. You know, a lot of interfaith things that I've been involved in have actually been focused on social issues, that where there are disenfranchised people in the community and how we can come together to support them. Or, for instance, the environment. The environment is one that in recent years, there's been a lot of interfaith activity in the UK, because all of our faiths teach us that we are stewards of the earth, that we have a responsibility to take care of both people around us and also the environment around us. So, we can look for that common ground. I mean, and as a Muslim myself, I know this is written in the Quran, that you look for that common word, that common ground that you share with people of all different faiths. So, whether they're Christians or Jews, or we can extend to actually anybody of any faith, and even humanitarians, look for what is that common ground that we share, and then build something where we can actually work together so that we can support each other on what we agree upon. We won't support each other on things that we disagree on. It takes longer to solve those issues. But on those things that we all agree upon, then we need to use that as a foundation and say, well, this is where we start. And then hopefully over time, as people get to know one another and work together within various frameworks that we put in place in society, whether they are, enfranchising people to become local councillors, or whether it's, interfaith networks, or whether it's some kind of another thing I was involved in for many years was local neighbourhood management, where various people and organisations and companies within a local community would actually come together, complementing but separate from the actual council. And, seeing what resources we can all pool, what time we can give to actually making something together as a community and solving some of the local issues. So this was actually partly local government led, by making this available, making some funds available for this. And also it was from local communities, their own companies that are based in those communities, for places of worship. Also families who might be very active locally, involved in many things, they can get involved in these local network structures, and between them actually work together to solve issues in complementing what local government is doing. So, I mean, this is another approach, and it does make a difference. I mean, if you see these areas that I've been involved in and the problems that they had, and then after some years of this sort of activity, you start to see things improve in the local area. So, and in an inclusive way. But it's very important that you also keep in mind, whenever you set something up, what is your demographic? What different groups are available in your local area? Who lives there? Who works there? And to ensure that whenever we set something up, that we speak to these people from these different communities. And if there is people that aren't there, that aren't taking part, that we reach out to them and say, tell them what we're trying to do and engage them and try to get them involved, and look for the people who aren't involved, because often it's all too easy that when an organization is set up or when a project is set up, the people that are just active, they get involved and they just get on with it. Mm-hmm. And they don't say, oh, hang on a minute, there aren't many women involved in that group, or there aren't many, people from a Christian background or a Muslim background or a Hindu background, and to see, well, how can we involve them? Do we speak to the local Gurdwara or Mandir? Do we speak to the local mosque? Do we speak to the church? What kind of networks do they have? How do they organize themselves? And then speak to those people and try and get them involved. Because the only way you can have inclusive communities is if you work to involve everybody as best as you're able.
Yeah.
I think that's my 10 minutes up. I mean, I can talk longer if you want, but I was timing myself.
Oh, well, maybe I can just continue it, is it? Because I truly agree on that. All the things that you have said, but then in my context, it would be art. So I'm just going to pass it to our moderator first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Mr. Armstrong. It was very informative and very beneficial presentation. Thank you so much. And next we have Miss Anna Karina Jardin.
Hello.
Miss Jardin is from the Philippines and is an entrepreneur and visual artist. And friends and colleagues, remember to like her Facebook page at Art Dialogo Asia. And so, Miss Jardin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I truly agree with Mr. Armstrong. Like, I just have to commend him on that. Like, this is just like very important that, you know, we come together as a community, because when we're addressing social inclusion, sometimes we wouldn't have to think like, oh, my color is different from the rest, or I'm a woman, or whatever. Like, all these demographics disintegrates. So that leads me to my talk. So the role of art in social inclusion, because we're talking about languages. Sometimes we don't speak the same language, but we can always make use of art as our common tool. So for me, my experience and my expertise, we're basically using art as a tool to, you know, build bridges among people and cultures. Because in here, like, art sees no color, sees no race, and then it welcomes everyone. Yeah. So we've been running like our yearly project. It's called Art Dialogo. And now we're doing it on a Southeast Asian level. And with that, we bring in like people of different backgrounds to enjoy culture, like learnings of culture through art from different parts of Southeast Asia. Maybe one day we can do it in Europe too. But going back, like with this, it's very important like to go to the grassroots level. And art has been a great tool for that. Sometimes people may not understand, because according to demographics, like, you know, if we will base it on demographics, some people wouldn't understand what is sustainable development, you know, like at the grassroots level. So if you want to actually extend the learning that we can get from sustainable development that values, or let's say like is its equation would be to equity. So they would want to address equity through the SDGs. Yeah, the 15, is it 15, 17 SDGs? Yeah, from MDGs to SDGs, like in 2015. So that's a lot. But then at the end of the day, we would like to address issues on social inclusion and then equity. Sometimes we talk about equity and equality, but I'm going to go with equity, because equality works if we're coming from the same start. Yeah. So we're coming from the same, like starting point. But then like now, as you know, the world starts to hear everyone as well and to see everyone, like we became more conscious. It's better that we focus on creating like measures that addresses equity. So it's more subjective. Yeah. So anyway, so I always believe that we can always address social inclusion when we involve young people as well. Like the role of the youth is also needed in addressing this. And yes, we can promote interaction through using public spaces efficiently. Yeah. So through also celebrations or festivities. So it's just like we come together and then enjoy what is just like very, how do I say, it's not really simple, but then we're going to make complex simpler through a language that we could understand the best, through sharing culture and arts. Yep. So as we go and move forward for something global or for globalization, the best thing that we can hold on to would be our culture, because we can never get lost. Yeah. And I believe like when we do have this better understanding of ourselves or of our culture or who we are, our heritage as well, then we will not be, how do I say, we will not be too judgmental of other people too. Yeah. So because we see ourselves in the mirror. Yeah. So is that my 10 minutes, or should I prolong it? Hello?
25
still have
You've got 5 more minutes.
Oh, 5 more minutes. I'm reserving it like for a more, you know, for more discussion. I think we can have like a more fruitful discussion in a while. Yeah.
So would you like to continue, or is it done, or?
Yeah, I'm done for now, and then
definitely. Okay.
Back later. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jardin. That was very interesting and very captivating presentation. And last but not least, we have Mr. Adnan Sohail. Mr. Sohail is a project manager at Minhaj Welfare Foundation in the UK. Mr. Sohail, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much to yourselves, IDE, for organizing this amazing webinar. Thank you to our speakers for shedding light on a very important topic. And thank you to all of our participants who've joined us around the world. Salam, ahlan wa sahlan, and welcome to you all. I have to say that it's been a very busy period for myself and our organization. It's been so busy that we finished one campaign and we're going into another campaign. Hence, I'm in my office, I'm listening to our speakers, both Paul and Mrs. Jardin. I'm learning from them both so much. I want to give this perspective of the title from a different angle. As an organization, we wear a number of hats. We are a non-governmental organizational. We are a humanitarian and development organization. We're a faith-based organization. We're a grassroots organization that is running more than 30 to 40 different projects in 90 countries worldwide. And that model is only successful because we can truly understand the requirements of society, the requirements of grassroots, the requirements of language, culture, and social needs for us to be able to work simultaneously and hand in hand with those living in whichever country they are living in. I just wanted to give an example from my own humanitarian and development work, and it can somehow relate to today's topic, just to give an understanding of how we can create inclusive societies, how we can create a sustainable model. We work in the development sector, and just for Mr. Jardin, there are 17 points that were mentioned by the Sustainable Development Goal, which prior it was the MDG, the Millennium Development Goals. So working in the development sector in the developing countries, we've learned a lot from the beneficiaries that we are working with. And I just wanted to take you to a small village in Kenya, in East Africa, where I think in 2011, I had the opportunity of traveling for the first time. And this was a very remote and marginalized area that did not have access to the very basic essentials of life, whether that was education, healthcare, clean water, or sanitation. So my first visit to this very remote, marginalized village, which took me about 7 hours to drive to, on a very bumpy road, on a very difficult terrain, where we were surrounded by wildlife, where we were surrounded by jungles. And then in amidst this jungle and wildlife, there was a community of people. This community had the passion to educate their children. This community who were, for many years of their life, were farmers and traded with one another through their farming. But all of a sudden, this community wanted to bring about a sustainable change. And one of the ways that we saw this passion coming out was this concept of interaction and taking on board different stakeholders. So we met the community elders who were kind of your counselors of that small village. Then we met the mothers who were the backbone of that entire village. You see, in every community, different kinds of people take a leading role. In Africa, in East Africa, we saw the passion and commitment of women. Women were the main bread earners in their families. The men spent many time working really hard, but it was the women who were passionate about this. Then we brought together the community elders, the women, the workers, the children, and we brought together a community discussion. that community discussion went on for hours and hours, where we spent listening to these people about their thoughts, about their ideas, and what did they want to bring about to their communities. And this is one thing which I thought would be quite relevant. And then they said that we want to bring these pillars which will create a sustainable model. And what were those sustainable models? They wanted to have education, they wanted healthcare, they wanted clean and clean water and sanitation, and they also wanted a sustainable livelihood. They wanted an opportunity so that they can educate themselves and not depend on handouts, not depend on others to provide them support. They have enough capacity to train themselves and equip themselves with life. And that's one thing which is vital with the topic that we have in discussion, that we're able to provide the tools, we're able to provide the information, the education to our communities, so that whatever they have or whatever they are doing, they have the capacity to build a community, whether they are black or white, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, to work hand in hand and provide a much better, sustainable livelihood, not just for themselves as a Muslim, but for themselves as a community. And this is why we feel, as an organization or as an experienced person working in the sector, that community-led work or community-led initiatives are always the most strongest, because you're working from the bottom all the way to the top. And this is why we are now seeing, even in this country, when the COVID-19 sort of split out here in the UK, we saw the government initiated many of its programs with the help of local organizations, because the strength is in the local grassroots communication. And this is where we need to really go back to understanding what are the needs and what are the requirements, irrespective of faith, color, or creed. If we are hoping to create a vibrant, inclusive, and a sustainable society. I ended with that because I, like Ms. Jardin, want to hear what some of our participants have in terms of a discussion. And I just wanted to give you a couple of anecdotes for you to think and ponder as a group, in terms of how we can sort of together build this narrative for this title. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sohail.
Yeah.
That was a very well and inspiring presentation. And we would like to thank each panel speaker for the engaging talks. I hope we all could learn and benefit from the knowledge, skills, and values that each panel speakers have shared in this event today. So moving to the next section of today's event is the Q&A section. The Q&A session will have the duration time around 25 minutes. So we would like to ask the audience, each participant who would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand button on the bottom right in the chat column. You'll find it there. And then remember to always direct your questions towards one of the speakers. So participants in the audience, you may ask your question.
Oke, terima kasih banyak untuk para pemateri yang sudah menyampaikan materinya, luar biasa. Kita mendapatkan ilmu, pelajaran, dan wawasan yang sangat bermanfaat sekali. Dan untuk acara selanjutnya yaitu sesi tanya jawab. So, buat teman-teman atau rekan-rekan semua yang ingin bertanya, silahkan memberi tanda raise hand mungkin, atau mungkin melalui chat kolom, atau mungkin nanti bisa bertanya dengan langsung kepada pembicara kita. Silahkan.
Okay. First we have Miss Ardeliana. You may unmute and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Ardell. Should I also introduce like where I'm from? But
Sure thing.
all right. Hi, I'm Ardell. I'm from Indonesia. I study at Senarma Film Academy. I'm in high school right now, and I'm an IB student. So specifically for Miss Jardin, I have like a question since I also take art. I found that a lot of my surroundings and a lot of people in my generation are sort of discouraged by art and the diversity that it holds and and like the potential it holds to actually sustain our community. So what do you think, or like how do you think we can actually encourage the younger generation to use art to sustain or prevent culture loss of culture?
Okay. Terima kasih for the question, Adeliana. I hope, yeah, I gotta practice my bahasa Indonesia a little bit. Well, in the traditional setting, they always discourage you not to take an artistic, artistic path, because they always say it's not economically sustainable, etc. I think you've heard about this. However, I always believe in the value of it. Like we should believe in the value of it. Like whatever we have right now, it came from our creative introspection, you know? Like sometimes we're too focused, like creating like the best business plan, the best thing. And we sometimes forget like the aspect of humanity, like to touch lives and to be, to share empathy. So that's one thing that art is actually teaching. And for this to be realized, this is where we also challenge the government to support the creative sector. I know and I believe like the artistic sector, the creative sector in Indonesia is really booming, like in the fine arts or the cultural aspect. And when you inculcate it in the context of development, and you would be able to get more support from the grassroots level. That's why now we're in the phase, like in my practice, like we're doing arts education to bring in everyone. So you have arts and education, what could go wrong, Like you can bring in everyone and, we can create this common ground. We can create this space where we can exchange experiences, open opportunities for each other, open and create opportunities for each other rather. And then together we can actually create something meaningful. And with that, when sometimes we need to address like different stakeholders into a project, let's say an art project, and work together with local governments. Like for instance, we do have a project to help professionalize artists. We actually have artists from Indonesia joining us for this cross-cultural program we called Art Dialogo, by which we travel to a different country or in a host country, we do it. It's like a Biennale or something like that, but we put in that development context to it. So the artists can be stakeholders. And now we're moving towards like to young, working with young artists, young creatives like you. So you can see what is out there as well. Yeah, so we make you stakeholders for community development. Yeah, so that's it. Hello.
Did you answer? Thank you so much, Miss Jardin.
Yeah.
So I think Mr. Sohail would like to respond. Mr. Sohail?
I don't want to respond to Mr. Jardin because this is her capacity. Just a couple of things. I think people might assume that art is a reflection of drawing or calligraphy or whatever. The art is a bit more than that.
More than that, exactly.
Here in the UK, we run a couple of programs. So one of the programs which I just wanted to let you know, and just to give some of our participants some ideas, is that we work with a number of high schools in the Northwest. Now, those are the children who come from very, I wouldn't say affluent families, but they come from very deprived backgrounds. Yeah. We use spoken word poetry as a form to take some of the children who who would probably get into gang warfare or who would probably get into street crimes, use spoken word as an art to gather them together. And some of these projects have been so successful. You've got kids who come from a Muslim background and non-Muslim background coming together and writing and giving poetry about the life of the Prophet Muhammad. So there was one project that we did with a school in the Northwest where we had Muslims and non-Muslims talking about the Prophet Muhammad and talking about his wife, the first wife, Khadija, and how Khadija was a role model. So you had some non-Muslim young girls talking about Khadija as a beautiful woman, as a woman who was a leader and a businesswoman. And this give an insight to those who are unfamiliar with the religion, to go more in deep in terms of understanding what the other person's culture does. And that's what art does. Art really gives you this power to understand others' cultures and others' thinking, because when you draw an image, it's a reflection of what you are seeing in front of you, and that can also be expressed by words. We also did something in London where we had some artists who were known to become street artists. So what we did was we got a couple of youngsters and we got them to paint some art in the back of our mosque in London. It just
we did the same.
It gives a very different perspective. Yeah. Art is more wider than I don't know, Monet or Picasso. I think so.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I will have to add on to that. It makes me so excited. Like, I do see maybe one day we can collaborate. But, you know, like I mentioned, like when you interject art into community development, you'll only go stronger. Yeah, you'll only go stronger because that is your anchor, like in bringing everyone together. Yeah, so it's just so nice. And keep it up. That's our identity, you know, our art, our culture, our heritage. That would be our identity. We can go global, but then if we're lost as an individual, we don't know who we are deep inside, like our heritage, then, you know, you'll be susceptible in having depression or having all these negative thoughts. That's why, like with art, it always gives you like a growth mindset as well. So we do all these kinds of programs, regardless your background. As long as you're a child, you're a youth, and you know, we try to make art like as a tool for you to discover who you are and your potentials, regardless. Like when we talk about social inclusion as well, I'm just going to add on social inclusion as well. There are people who ask, oh, sometimes we're having a hard time to get some funding and all because we use the word, let's say, refugee. You know, let's say those words, let's say that. Oh, we're having a hard time to get this. But yes, I always tell them, or like in discussion, like it's good. The content of the program is good, but sometimes like labeling. Yeah, sometimes like when we label people, like a group of people, sometimes the limitation starts there. So we can just like embrace different backgrounds and work from there and work with their potential and not the misery. We don't project like the misery of the people, rather like the potential that we see through them. And we can pull it out, like their potentials, through creative efforts, just like what Brother Sohail is also doing, yeah, in their organization. Yeah. So
thank you, Mr. Sohail, and thank you, Miss Jardin. So next we have Mr. Abbasi, who would like to ask a question. Mr. Abbasi, you may ask your question.
It's not so much of a question, rather a kind of a point of encouragement. I think you guys are doing absolutely fantastic in building great conversations between the UK and Indonesia, as well as other countries. And I just want to say, you know, carry on, and we are there for you, myself, Paul, Adnan, and others. And I think you're doing great job. And please carry on, because these kind of conversations actually matter to Indonesia and Indonesia's future. You guys have got a great potential, great nation, and I'm just saying, just carry on. You're doing fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abbasi. Next, I think we have Mr. Mohammed Risma Pramana, who wants to ask a question. So you may ask your question. Sorry. Okay.
Bless you.
Sorry, Mr. Mohammed Risma Pramadi, you may ask your question.
Hello. I would like to ask a question about the project international. It was like how to the organization could make sure the plan going well regarding because Mr. Adnan Sohail said like in Kenya they have a project and then they have to like across the forest something like that, and then how this like the main office or brain office can track this this project going well something like that. And then Mr. Adnan Sohail also said we can study by ourselves, but we don't need to wait for the organization to teach us, but how we know we study strike the role, or we going out to the role.
So Mr. Pramadi, who are you directing your questions to?
Mr. Adnan Sohail.
So Mr. Sohail, the floor is yours to answer.
He needs to be unmuted. We can't hear you.
Is he muted? Oh.
Huh?
Okay.
I have a really bad cough. Sorry. I didn't understand the second question. If you could possibly ask the question in Bahasa, and they could probably translate it. I was just trying my best to understand the second point.
Maybe Mr. Pramadi, you can repeat your question.
Okay, my first question is how we can track the plan, how we can track the planning, how we can track the planning during when you're doing the project like far away from the city, and then less technology.
Okay, great question.
And then the second one is like how we study how can I say that? How can we study like strike the way without people teaching us the material we should study?
Okay, I'll try my best to answer your question. The first one, second one, you'll have to just help me a bit, just so I can give you a better answer. The first one, you see, international aid workers or international NGOs that have been working around the world, especially in the developing countries, you see, it's changed. This has been something that's been going on for the past 100 years. We've got big NGOs like Oxfam, Save the Children, UN has various strands of its partners that are working in the developing world. But in the past 10 years, IT is a very important tool that a lot of international organizations are utilizing in an effective manner. I'll just give you an example. I'm not sure if any of you know the telecommunication company Ericsson. You know Ericsson?
Yeah.
So Ericsson now is working in close ties with the United Nations, and part of Ericsson's humanitarian sector. So you see, this is beautiful that Ericsson as a telecommunication is providing you a service to call one another, but they are now providing a service in terms of humanitarian development. So their expertise is IT. So, for example, in a village like Kenya, or in a really remote area in Indonesia, when the tsunami happened in 2005 in Banda Aceh, if you were to able to use IT effectively, we'll be able to account for the number of people that have been affected, and then ensure that we can get the aid across to the people at real time to make sure that they have the right essentials to survive in a very difficult period. And that's what organizations like Minhaj Welfare Foundation are also doing. We're using IT, we're using the aspects of IT to ensure that we can reach out to those who are living in marginalized areas. So I hope that kind of helps answer your first question. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So the second question, this is where I need your help now. I didn't understand in terms of your second question, in terms of education, teaching. I was unclear with that.
Okay. First of all, before you say it's like we can study. We can study by ourselves. We don't need to wait for the organization teach us about the education, but the question is how we can strike educated without people telling us, like teaching us for the good education.
So I'm not sure if I said that. I'm a massive supporter of education. Possibly it might be a misunderstanding. The example that I give you in terms of Kenya was just an example of being able to sit with different stakeholders, understanding the need of grassroots communities before you start any project, before you start any initiative. It's important that you have access to your different stakeholders. The concept of education that I tried to give you was, I believe that education is at the forefront to ensuring that communities can have a much stronger and sustainable livelihood. Because if you look at the example in many poor regions, you'll see that people are either farmers, peasant farmers. They have a very simple job that they're always doing, but because they're unable to educate the children, they're unable to foresee a stronger future. So I believe that education is important, basically.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pramadi. Thank you so much, Mr. Sohail, for your response. We have more time for questions. So next is we have Miss Risma. She wrote her question in the chat column, and it's directed to Mr. Armstrong. The question. She wrote, how to improve personal development in terms of discipline and organizational development. Mr. Armstrong, you may answer the question. The floor is yours.
That's quite a big one to kind of cover here. I can't really do justice to the topic in the amount of time to answer the question. But I mean, obviously, both personal development and discipline are very important. I mean, a lot of personal development actually comes from checking ourselves every day, what we're doing, how we perform that day, how we spent our time, and then learning the lessons from that, how we can improve for the following day, how we can improve, then check at the end of the week, think back over what you've done over the past week and how you could have spent your time better, or was there anything you did which was kind of a waste of time that you could have spent on something else. And other lessons that you can learn, and it's keeping track of this. I mean, it might be helpful if you have a little book to jot down notes of things that you've learned. When it comes to obviously organizational development, there are structures which you can learn from that are out there, and see which one of those would be best for your organization. And obviously, I think that would vary also from one country to another country. So what I might say might be applicable in the UK context. And some of that might be stuff that can be learned from in other contexts, but might not work if it's just transferred as it is to another country. Because obviously every country's got their own systems. But obviously you need to have some kind of organizational structure. You need to have focus. Whatever you're doing, you need to have the concept in mind and stick to your concept, develop your concept, and also have you need to have that kind of focus, and not lose focus, because if you take on too many things at any one time, that can also be a problem. Right. So it's but like I said, when it comes to organization, there are actually models out there. I'd look at business models, and see what works best for your particular organization. And that would be better than anything I could discuss now. There was another point I actually wanted to say in response to Ms. Jardin and what she was saying about art. Because I think in the modern world, there's a lot of things now that are becoming automated. A lot of things which are being moved to AI that previously were jobs that people were doing. So there are going to be, in the next decade or two, there are going to be a lot of jobs that are actually going to be lost initially, because people are going to be replaced in a lot of, I know, clerical, analytical jobs, things that can be done using computers or artificial intelligence. So this is why we have to be adaptable. But one area where AI, I don't think, will ever be able to compete with human beings is in the area of art. And art is something in all its different forms, which kind of, as you said, culture. Art defines us as human beings. If you take that kind of art and creative side out of us, that's it. What's left? What's left is human. They express our spirit and our soul. They express feelings and desires. All of the arts between them, they express the things that really make us human. So AI, I don't think, will ever be able to compete in those particular areas. So it is actually, although in the past it might not have been the focus that people wanted their children to go into, they'd have focused more on law or becoming, biomedical science, so they could become some kind of doctor or specialist in the medical profession. They focused on these things, and they're still good. But I think the arts in future are going to be an area which is going to be more open for development. And also, not only that, but I think it is something that we're going to have to, as societies, develop more. Because if people are losing their jobs in all these other areas, then we need to focus on, well, what can we do as human beings, which machines will never be able to replace us.
Yeah. So I wish to add on that. Thank you. Well, art can be like an elusive ingredient to collective efficacy eventually, Like now you mentioned, like, we have so many great minds in there, like doctors, mathematicians, and all that. But we need to create like more artists, healers, writers, and all that, who would care about the world eventually. Yeah, like we need to, not lose sight. And we talk about developmental terms. Like before, when I was younger, I just have to share. When I was younger, wow, this is like, these are like developmental organizations, big ones and all. I'd like to be a part of it. Yes, because it's so nice for my resume. But then at the end of the day, what matters most is what builds my character, doing things for other people who cannot actually, do things for me. And that's how you can strengthen your link with the communities and be relevant all the time and solidify that link with the grassroots level. Yeah, so we can stir it up like on the grassroots level again. Yeah, Sohail, are you here?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. And I just wanted to, I think Paul's right as well. There are always avenues in terms of utilizing modern education to become innovative. I think so. I think innovation is a key word here in whatever you do. And it's important that we, just adding to what Paul was saying in terms of personal development, one thing I would advise working in an organization, having this structure, having sort of program managing my staff members, is I always say to them, make sure you go to some learning courses. There's plenty of courses online in terms of project management courses, program management courses, which can help you develop yourselves as individuals. And these little things that you take up on in terms of courses will always sort of enrich your knowledge, your education in whatever field you go into. So I think that's quite vital. And innovation is something that's kind of utilized in every sector right now. So yeah, I agree with both of you.
Yeah.
Another thing about arts as well is going way outside of the normal field of art. A lot of people don't realize, I mean, Einstein was a tremendous physicist. You know, all our physics now is to some degree based upon, I mean, it's been developed since, but it's based upon what he discovered and what he elucidated in his theories. And what a lot of people don't realize is, although he was a tremendous physicist, one of the techniques that he used to develop his theories was his imagination.
Yeah.
He did thought experiments, and he imagined like what it would be like to be a photon particle coming from the sun and things like this, you know, and that he then used to develop his physics. So this was actually a science. You can't get any more scientific than physics. And yet, you know, he used art it was an art because his creativeness came into it, so that he could actually visualize. And, you know, I don't know, when I realized this and I heard someone describe it, I thought, blimey, that's like he's got like some virtual reality thing going on inside his head. You know, a lot of people need computers to model this stuff. But he had a tremendous imagination to be able to do that. But he used it for physics. So it doesn't always come out in art, but it comes into everything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Mr. Paul. Yeah. Really agree with you.
Ms. Jardin, Mr. Sohail, and Mr. Armstrong probably will be accepting another 3 to 4 questions due to time limitations. So next question is directed to Mr. Sohail. It's from Miss Vivi Lutvia. She's asking how to sustain the development which is already going on right now for the young generations. Mr. Sohail, the floor is yours.
No, we have some very difficult questions, right? So I have a theory about this. You know, young people is always my passion. One, because I'm young myself, very young. And secondly, because I feel that this is an era for young people. I think it's important that as the wider society, and I take this as an example from the work that we do, unless you do not put young people in the shoes of a managing director, or if you don't put young people in the shoes of a president or a prime minister, or do not give them the responsibility of what's happening in the world that we are living in, you will never be able to create a sort of sustainable youth-led generation. So we have to be, as a youth generation, we got to give them the opportunities, or you as youngsters who are watching this broadcast right now, have to take the responsibility, whether it's now or tomorrow, to become managing directors, to become heads of your companies, for you to become leaders. Paul said he's always been in politics. Here in the UK, I'm not sure if it happens now, but in various boroughs and various town councils, they have a mayor who's obviously at a very mature age, but they also have a parallel system for young people just to encourage them. They have something called the Young Mayor. In the UK Parliament, every year there is a youth parliament that sits. It might be ceremonial, but the idea is to give them an opportunity for them to discuss and share their ideas. So that's my take on this in terms of how we can create a sort of sustain our young generation and ensure that they are working in parallel, because the time we're living in is moving so fast right now, and the old people are growing old too quick, and these positions need to be taken by our youngsters very quickly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sohail, for your response, and thank you, Miss Vivi, for your question. Next, we have Mr. Rofi Rusdiana. You may ask your question, and please do direct your questions at one of the speakers. I will unmute you. You may ask your question.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
we clearly hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I have a question to Mr. Adnan. So I was impressed by your idea about grassroots activity, but the thing is, I always want to do like a grassroots activity or project, but in my case, I live in a society which has a very strong religion conservative value, and there's a lot of hierarchy value, that there's a lot of bureaucracy and something like that. So the thing is, how to start a grassroots activity without care about that bureaucracy or a strong religion conservative value. If does it make sense? Sorry if does.
So am I okay to answer this question, Chair? Am I okay to answer this question?
Mr. Rusdiana, who are you directing this question to?
Mr. Adnan, sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Sohail, the floor is yours.
Yeah. It kind of is so. To set up any grassroots organization, it's vital that you get everybody on board, even those bureaucracies. Again, this is my personal. It's not the book way of working, or it's not theoretical, but in terms of experience, it's important that those who oppose your thoughts or ideas, that you find a way of including them in initial discussions that you have, because no matter what happens, they will always become a block for you to move ahead. If there is extremity, or if there is religiosity in whatever levels of work you want to develop, it's important that you get rid of that extremity or religiosity in the beginning, so you don't have any issues later on. So it's important that you use a bit of wisdom. You use a bit of politics, and I use this politics in a very in inverted commas. You've got to play according to their understanding. This is why we even learn this from our tradition, religious tradition, that whenever you have communities together, you communicate according to their intellect, but at the same time, you make sure that you preserve your main objective. Do not ever compromise on your objectives or your core values, because as soon as you compromise on your core values, you will never be able to lose, or you will never be able to establish your governance or your organization. It's important you get them on board. Find ways. If one doesn't work, find a different way. If they don't like I don't know, fish, give them some rice. If they don't like samosas, give them some kebabs. Give them different flavors. And once they like something, okay, give them a bit more so that they can keep on eating it. And once they eat, then they're yours, basically.
Thank you, Mr. Sohail. Did that answer your question, Mr. Rusdiano? Okay. So next we have Miss Ardeliana again. You may ask your question.
Sorry if I'm asking a lot of questions, and thank you for answering my previous questions as well. I still have this one question, which I kind of want to direct to Mr. Sohail. You mentioned that regarding the careers and jobs in the art sector, as well as Ms. Jardin, who's also expanded on that. I kind of want to ask how do you think we can actually increase the demand of creative jobs and decrease the economic discrimination in society regarding that, especially in like such a financially pressuring society, that sort of thrives on money more than more than art, or more than the creativity or effort behind it.
So if you could just ask your question from the beginning, I missed the first part of the question.
Oh yeah, how do you think we can actually increase the demand of creative jobs and decrease the socioeconomic or economic discrimination?
Okay. Especially, so you're asking as an artist here, or you're asking somebody who's going in the art industry, I'm assuming, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, if you put art to one side, I think it's important, and again, this is something that's been echoed a number of times, and again, I'll give you a concept from my own profession. The third sector, or the charity or the NGO sector, relied very heavily on volunteer time and volunteer donations, etc., etc. We could never survive based upon small donations in terms of longevity, or in terms of a sustainable organizational model. I think it's imperative, especially in terms of the economical downfalls that we have in whatever working environment that we have, that we always have this sort of business mindset in whatever approach that we have in whatever field that we are going to take, basically. I think that's kind of vital to ensure that we eradicate any economical obstacles that we might have in the way. Or, for example, I think a lot of parents will say, become an engineer, or become a doctor, or become a teacher. At least there's a tangible response in terms of finance in front of you. But with art, what are you going to do? You're not going to achieve anything. So I think it's important as individuals, and I think this is where a lot of academia, a lot of academical institutions really need to set out some sort of a business approach to when it comes to department like art, or institutions or departments where the financial output isn't as strong as other sectors. So it's something that I think the academical institutions need to work hard. And as an individual, I think it's something that you would also need to create this sort of business approach when going into this field. I'm not an expert when it comes to economy, but in terms of my own profession, I can only give you an example from there. If Paul or Anna can help, you're more than welcome.
I will add on to that. Like, you keep on mentioning innovation. Well, like for me, I'm going to share like what I do. Like, I'm an artist, but then eventually I created a demand for corporate social responsibility projects that are more towards to the creative side. So you need to keep on innovating, and that you can be sustainable. And then at the same time, like, you have this sturdy structure that will give opportunity for, let's say, your volunteers, your staff, or those you bring into this creative kind of business model that you have, that also helps people, the opportunity to grow and then learn from that. So, like, for me, I'm creating like signature programs. And then, however, I need to do some patent and all. So that's where you need to invest on some things. Like, you need to invest on your ideas, believe in your ideas. you know. And like for now, like I'm sharing this because this came in very handy for me. You know, I've been doing community work since I was like 13 years old, and then because of art, I'm very active using art. That's my first love, and I'm still with my first love, which is art. And how do I say it? I valued it. It valued me back as well. And now we get to work with different organizations, not just in the Philippines, also here in Malaysia, and then also in Indonesia as well, and all parts, you know, different parts of the world. So you just have to hold on to that idea that you have, develop it, and if you think no one, you need to. This is one tip also I may share, like on a personal level, like surround yourself with people who believes in you. You know, I know it's difficult, but then when you have someone, even if the person is just, you know, just one person, be with that person who believes in you. Yeah, when you have that person, then you can go far. So.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for answering my question, Ms. Jardin, and also Mr. Sohail.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Adeliana, for your question. And thank you, Ms. Jardin and Mr. Sohail, for your response. And maybe the last question is from Mr. Rafi Rusdiana, because due to time limitation, we can allow one last question. And so, Mr. Rafi Rusdiana, you may
I'm sorry.
ask a question.
Thank you, but I'm sorry. I think it was from my previous question, or I just missed it.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
So, dear friends and colleagues, you may answer. There's one more question left. You can answer. I mean, you can ask one more question.
Yang ingin bertanya bisa raise hand di panel.
We have one more question. We have one room left for one more question. Silakan teman-teman yang ingin bertanya. Kita Okay.
I think there's no more question.
Okay. So we would like to move on to the next part, and we would like to thank all the participants in the audience who contributed a question. And I would like my colleague, Ms. Triska, to take over.
Oke, terima kasih banyak kepada peserta yang sudah bertanya, dan juga terima kasih banyak kepada pemateri yang sudah menjawab pertanyaan dari peserta. Dan untuk teman-teman yang pertanyaannya belum terjawab, mohon maaf, mungkin di next event. Oke, sekarang boleh buka kameranya, kita akan foto bersama.
So before we proceed to the closing, let us all take a photo together. So we would like to ask every single participant and Mr. and Miss speakers to open their video screen. And I would like my colleague, Miss Fairley, to take the picture, please, for us for today's event.
I'm going to screenshot all of us in one place. So make sure you open your camera right now. Okay. So before that, there are a lot of participants here, so it's gonna take a little bit of time, okay? All right, we're gonna start now for the first one.
Maybe Fairly can say 1, 2, 3, so you can be ready.
Okay, sorry. All right, do it again. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, again. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. I think that's it. Yeah, that's all.
Oke.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
I would
good.
like to hand to my colleague, Ms. Triska, for the closing, and then I'll do the English translation afterwards. Ms. Triska?
Oke, acara terakhir yaitu penutup. Alhamdulillah dan terima kasih banyak kepada pemateri yang sudah meluangkan waktunya dan untuk berbagi ilmu kepada kami di IDE Dunia. Semoga senantiasa dalam kebaikan. Terima kasih pula kepada para peserta yang udah bergabung di webinar internasional IDE Dunia, dan terima kasih pula kepada panitia dan juga para pemateri dan telah berbagi ilmu kepada kami semua. Dan untuk teman-teman yang ingin tahu untuk webinar internasional untuk selanjutnya, jangan lupa pantengin terus IG kami, Twitter kami, dan Facebook kami, yaitu IDE Dunia. Dan saya Triska Rahmatullahi dari Turki.
So first off, I would like to say a big thank you to all the 3 speakers who give their time to be here in this webinar and to share their ideas, knowledge, skills, and values from their own fields and expertise for us to gain from. We would like to thank every single participant in the audience who are willing to give their time to be here with us today and to also contribute the questions. We hope that today's webinar is useful for us all and enhances our knowledge more on the topic of creating a vibrant, sustainable, and inclusive societies and communities. Thank you so much, everyone. And saya Fermi dari Wina, Austria.
Dan saya Triska Rahmatullahi dari Turki. Thank you all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bye-bye.
Shalom. Om Shanti Shanti Om. Namo Buddhaya. Salam kebajikan. Thank you so much, everyone. This is Triska and Fermi signing out. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.